The sound of sirens wailing through the night jolted Logan Forrester awake. He fumbled for his glasses on the nightstand, knocking over a half-empty glass of water in the process. Not again, he thought. This was the third emergency alert this week, and it was only Wednesday. Ever since the Keldari ships had appeared in Earth's orbit 37 days ago, life had become a series of drills, warnings, and tense diplomatic updates. Logan slipped into his boots and grabbed his emergency pack, a habit now ingrained after weeks of uncertainty. The illuminated clock on his wall read 3:17 a.m. He groaned and pulled on a jacket over his rumpled t-shirt as the automated emergency system blared through his apartment's speakers. This is not a drill. All citizens in Sector 7 must proceed to designated community shelters. Repeat, this is not a drill. Unlike previous alerts, this one didn't mention a practice exercise. Logan's stomach tightened as he shouldered his pack and headed for the door. In the hallway, his neighbors were already streaming toward the stairwell, some still in pajamas, others fully dressed as if they'd been expecting this. "Any idea what's happening?" Logan asked Mr. Donovan from 4B, a retired military officer who seemed to know more than most about the alien situation. "Word is they've landed," Donovan replied grimly. "Not just the scout ships this time. Something big touched down at the old fairgrounds." Logan felt his mouth go dry. The fairgrounds were less than 2 miles from their apartment complex. Outside, the night sky was illuminated not by stars, but by the eerie bluish glow of what locals had started calling watchlights, projected beams from the Keldari ships that had been scanning Earth's surface since their arrival. Tonight, however, those lights were concentrated in a tight formation directly over the fairgrounds. Military vehicles roared past as Logan and his neighbors made their way to the community center that had been designated as their sector's shelter. National Guard troops directed the flow of people, their faces tense beneath their helmets. Inside the shelter, Logan found a spot against the wall and sank down, watching as families huddled together on cots and emergency workers distributed water. The community center's large television screens showed news footage from around the world, similar scenes playing out in dozens of cities across 6 continents. "They're making simultaneous contact," said a woman next to him, her eyes fixed on the screen. "It's coordinated." Logan nodded. The Keldari had been methodical from the beginning. First contact had been a single transmission to every major government simultaneously. Then came the ships, positioning themselves over major population centers, but taking no hostile action. The diplomatic channels had been open for weeks, but little information had filtered down to the public. The screens suddenly switched to live footage from the fairgrounds. Logan leaned forward, his heart racing. A massive ship, far larger than the scout vessels they'd grown accustomed to seeing, had landed in the center of the fairgrounds. Its sleek, iridescent surface reflected the military spotlights trained on it. A hush fell over the shelter as everyone watched the feed. A seam appeared in the side of the ship, widening into what was clearly an exit ramp. The camera zoomed in as figures emerged, tall, broad-shouldered beings with skin that seemed to shift between deep blue and purple. "The Keldari. Those are their warriors," someone whispered. "The diplomats we've seen in the broadcasts are smaller." Logan counted 6 Keldari warriors forming a semicircle at the base of the ramp. They carried no visible weapons, but their massive frames, easily 7 feet tall, made that seem irrelevant. Between them walked a smaller figure, clearly of importance based on the ornate garments it wore. "That's Ambassador Trell," said Mr. Donovan, who had made his way to Logan's side. "He's been their primary representative in the talks." Then something else emerged from the ship, something that made the crowd in the shelter gasp collectively. At first, Logan thought it was some kind of vehicle, but as it moved into the light, he realized it was alive. A massive creature, easily the size of a rhino but with none of a rhino's clumsiness, stalked down the ramp. Its 6 legs moved with predatory grace, and its elongated head swung from side to side, revealing multiple rows of teeth when it opened its mouth to emit a sound that, even through the television speakers, made Logan's skin crawl. "God help us," someone murmured. The creature's hide was a mottled pattern of the same blue-purple as the Keldari, but with streaks of crimson running along its spine. Two additional appendages extended from its shoulders, not quite arms, not quite tentacles, but clearly prehensile as they curled and uncurled in the air. One of the military commanders approached the Keldari delegation, flanked by armed soldiers who looked insignificant next to both the aliens and their beast. Words were exchanged, though the audio feed was too distant to capture them. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice announced over the shelter's PA system, "we have received word that this is a formal diplomatic meeting. Please remain calm and stay in the shelter until further notice." Logan couldn't take his eyes off the screen. The meeting at the fairgrounds continued, with more human officials arriving. Then, something unexpected happened. The feed cut out abruptly. Murmurs of alarm spread through the shelter. The screen switched to a news anchor who looked as confused as everyone else. "We've temporarily lost our feed from the fairgrounds," she said. "We'll return to live coverage as soon as possible. In the meantime, officials assure us that diplomatic talks are proceeding." Logan exchanged glances with Mr. Donovan. "That doesn't sound good," he said. "No," Donovan agreed. "It doesn't." An hour passed with only vague updates. People in the shelter grew restless. Some tried to sleep. Others huddled around phones trying to get information from social media or alternative news sources. Logan paced, too anxious to sit still. Then his phone buzzed with a message from his friend Elliot, who worked at the city's emergency management office. "They're requesting civilian scientists to consult. Your name came up because of your xenobiology papers. Military transport coming for you." Logan stared at the message in disbelief. His papers on theoretical xenobiology had been published in obscure academic journals' speculative work about how alien life might evolve. He'd never imagined they'd be relevant to an actual first contact situation. Before he could even reply, a National Guard officer entered the shelter and called out, "Logan Forrester." All eyes turned to him. Logan raised his hand, suddenly feeling very conspicuous. "Sir, please come with me. You're needed at the command post." The drive to the fairgrounds perimeter took less than 10 minutes. Logan sat in the back of a military jeep, clutching his emergency pack, trying to make sense of what was happening. "What exactly am I supposed to do?" he asked the driver. "Not my department, sir. All I know is they asked for civilians with certain expertise. You'll be briefed when we arrive." The jeep passed through 3 security checkpoints before stopping at a large tent that had been set up a quarter-mile from the Keldari ship. Inside, military personnel and civilians in suits huddled around monitors and communications equipment. A woman in an army uniform with colonel's insignia approached Logan. "Dr. Forrester, I'm Colonel Patricia Hayes. Thank you for coming on such short notice." "I'm not actually a doctor," Logan said quickly. "I have a master's in evolutionary biology. My xenobiology work was purely theoretical." "Right now, theoretical is all we've got," Hayes replied. "Follow me." She led him to a secluded corner of the tent, where several screens displayed different angles of the Keldari delegation and their beast. The creature was even more intimidating up close, its muscular body rippling as it paced behind the Keldari ambassador. "The situation is this," Hayes said, keeping her voice low. "The Keldari have made it clear that they consider Earth a potential colony. They don't view us as equals. This meeting was supposed to be the start of surrender negotiations." Logan felt his blood run cold. Surrender. "But they haven't shown any aggression yet. Until now," Hayes pointed at the beast. "That creature is called a Vrekax. It's apparently their elite hunting animal. The ambassador called it a demonstration of Keldari superiority. Basically, they brought their attack dog to scare us." Logan studied the creature on the screen. Despite his fear, his scientific curiosity kicked in. The Vrekax moved with remarkable efficiency, its multiple legs allowing for both speed and stability. Its head structure suggested highly developed sensory organs. "What do they expect us to do?" he asked. "That's the problem. They've given us 12 hours to acknowledge Keldari dominion or they'll unleash these creatures in major cities. They claim one Vrekax can cleanse an area of 10 square miles in a single day." Logan shuddered. "And you want me to, what, find a weakness?" For now, we want you to observe and provide any insights. The diplomatic team is stalling while we consider options. Military action is on the table, but we don't know enough about their technology to be confident. A commotion near the front of the tent drew their attention. A man in a rumpled suit was arguing with security personnel. "That's Dr. Calloway from Biometric Defense," Hayes said. "He thinks we should try to capture the Vrekax for study." Logan watched as the argument intensified. Calloway was gesturing wildly at the screens, insisting on something that the security team clearly didn't like. Finally, Hayes excused herself to intervene. Left alone, Logan focused on the screens, watching the Vrekax's movements. There was something almost familiar about its behavior patterns. The way it paced, the way it occasionally paused to scent the air, the deferential position it took when the Keldari ambassador spoke to it. Logan pulled out his phone and quickly searched through his cloud storage for a paper he'd written 3 years ago on convergent evolution, the phenomenon where unrelated species develop similar traits due to similar environmental pressures. He found the file and skimmed through it until he reached the section on predatory behavior patterns. When Hayes returned, Logan was scribbling notes furiously. "Colonel, I think there's something important about the Vrekax that everyone's missing," he said without looking up. "What's that?" "It's not just a weapon, it's a domesticated animal." Logan pointed to the screen. "Look at its behavior. The posturing, the constant checking with its handlers, the way it responds to their commands. This isn't just a monster they've trained to kill, it's their equivalent of a dog." Hayes looked skeptical. "A dog that can cleanse 10 square miles. A very dangerous dog, yes, but still an animal with predictable behaviors and instincts." Logan tapped his notes. "In my research, I theorized that certain predatory behaviors would be universal constants regardless of where life evolved. The Vrekax is confirming some of my hypotheses. How does this help us? It might give us a way to approach the situation that doesn't involve military confrontation." If the Vrekax really is like a dog, then an alarm blared through the tent, cutting him off. One of the officers shouted, "Movement at the ship. They're advancing." On the screens, Logan saw the Keldari delegation moving forward, the Vrekax now taking point. The human officials retreated, military personnel moving to create a protective barrier. "They're supposed to have 11 more hours," Hayes said, already moving toward the communications station. "What are they doing?" Logan watched the Vrekax carefully. Its posture had changed, head lower, shoulder appendages fully extended. It wasn't attacking yet, but it was clearly in a threatening stance. Hayes returned quickly. "The ambassador says he's accelerating the timetable due to our disrespectful hesitation. He's going to give us a demonstration of the Vrekax's capabilities." "We need to get out there," Logan said suddenly. Hayes stared at him. "Absolutely not. No civilians near that thing. If I'm right about its behavior patterns, I might be able to defuse the situation without violence." "You said yourself military action might not work against their technology. And one civilian with a theory about alien dogs will. It's not just a theory anymore," Logan insisted. "Everything I'm seeing confirms it. The Vrekax is their status symbol, their show of power. But at its core, it's a highly evolved predator that's been domesticated. Its behaviors will follow certain biological imperatives." Hayes looked from Logan to the screen and back again. The situation at the meeting point was deteriorating rapidly. Military personnel were taking defensive positions, weapons trained on the Keldari delegation and their beast. "This is insane," Hayes muttered, then keyed her radio. "Hold positions but do not, repeat, do not fire unless fired upon. We're sending in a specialist." 5 minutes later, Logan found himself in a jeep heading directly toward the standoff. His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. The colonel had given him a calm device but otherwise sent him with no equipment, no protection. "Get as close as they'll let you," she'd instructed. "If you're right, do whatever you think will work. If you're wrong." She hadn't finished the sentence. The jeep stopped 100 yards from the confrontation. Logan could see the Keldari ambassador standing with his warriors, the Vrekax pacing menacingly in front of them. Across a no-man's land of about 50 feet, Human military and diplomatic personnel held their positions, weapons ready. Logan stepped out of the jeep on shaky legs. A soldier tried to stop him, but a command in his earpiece from Hayes made the man step back. Logan took a deep breath and began walking forward, trying to project a confidence he didn't feel. As he approached, all eyes, human and alien, turned to him. The Vrekax noticed him immediately, its head swiveling to track his movement. Logan could now see that what he'd thought were eyes were actually clusters of light-sensitive organs, giving the creature nearly 270-degree vision. He stopped about 20 feet from the line of human officials. From here, he could see the Keldari in detail, their textured skin, the subtle ridges on their faces, the four-fingered hands that ended in short, blunt claws. The ambassador was indeed smaller than the warriors, but his posture radiated authority. "I request permission to approach," Logan called out, addressing both the human officials and the Keldari. The human side erupted in confused whispers. A military officer stepped forward. "Sir, get back behind our line immediately." But the Keldari ambassador raised a hand, silencing everyone. "Let the human approach," he said in accented but clear English. "I am curious what this lone individual thinks he can accomplish." Logan swallowed hard and walked forward into the no-man's land. The Vrekax made a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through Logan's chest. Up close, the creature was even more terrifying, easily 9 feet long from snout to tail, with muscles that rippled beneath its blue-purple hide. The crimson stripes along its spine seemed to pulse with their own internal light. "Ambassador Trell," Logan said, hoping he was pronouncing the name correctly, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding between our species." The ambassador tilted his head, an oddly bird-like gesture. "There is no misunderstanding. We have made our position clear. Earth will submit to Keldari governance, or it will face consequences." He gestured to the Vrekax. "Mekvar here is merely the first of many such consequences." The Vrekax Mekvar snarled, displaying multiple rows of serrated teeth. Its shoulder appendages writhed in what Logan interpreted as anticipation. Logan nodded, trying to keep his fear from showing. "I understand that Mekvar is a powerful creature. On Earth, we also have powerful creatures that we've domesticated." "Your Earth predators are nothing compared to a Vrekax," one of the warriors said dismissively. "Mekvar can tear through your strongest metals, track prey across any terrain, and kill without making a sound when needed." "Impressive," Logan agreed. "Our most dangerous predators can't do that. But we have formed bonds with many animals." He glanced around the fairgrounds and spotted what he was looking for: a broken tree branch, about 3 feet long, lying near the edge of the clearing. Moving slowly, telegraphing his movements, Logan walked over and picked up the branch. The Vrekax followed his movement, its head tracking him with predatory focus. "What are you doing?" the ambassador demanded. Logan returned to his previous position, holding the branch at his side. "I'd like to demonstrate something about Earth species. May I?" The ambassador conferred briefly with his warriors in their own language, a series of clicks and humming tones. Then he nodded. "Proceed, but be warned. If you make any threatening movement, Mekvar will react decisively." Logan took a deep breath and looked directly at the Vrekax. Its attention was now fully on him, or more specifically, on the branch in his hand. Just as he'd hoped, in one smooth motion, Logan raised the branch, making sure to keep his movements non-threatening. The Vrekax's head lifted, its multiple sensory organs focusing intently on the piece of wood. "Fetch," Logan called out and threw the stick directly over the Vrekax's head. Time seemed to slow. Logan could hear gasps from the human side, could see the Keldari warriors tensing, reaching for what must be weapons at their sides. The ambassador's face showed confusion, then alarm. But the Vrekax reacted before anyone else could. With startling speed for its size, it spun around, its 6 legs working in perfect coordination as it bounded after the flying stick. Its shoulder appendages extended fully, ready to grasp. The stick clattered to the ground about 30 feet behind the Keldari delegation. The Vrekax pounced on it, grasping it with one shoulder appendage while making a sound that Logan recognized immediately, a sound of excitement, of play. The fairgrounds fell silent except for the Vrekax, which was now trotting back toward them, proudly carrying the stick in its appendage. It moved past the stunned Keldari warriors and approached Logan directly, dropping the stick at his feet with what could only be described as expectation. Logan couldn't help but smile. He bent down and picked up the stick, now slick with the Vrekax's saliva, which had an odd, metallic smell. "Good boy," he said, and gave the creature's head a cautious pat. The Vrekax rumbled not a growl this time, but something closer to a purr. "What is the meaning of this?" The ambassador's voice was tight with what might have been embarrassment. "What have you done to Mekvar?" Logan straightened up, still keeping one hand on the Vrekax's head. "I haven't done anything to him. I simply recognized something about him that perhaps you take for granted. Mekvar isn't just a weapon or a tool. He's a companion species like many animals on Earth. He's been bred and trained not just to hunt and kill, but to bond with his handlers." The Vrekax nudged Logan's hand, clearly wanting him to throw the stick again. This behavior, playing fetch, is something many Earth predators do, especially those we've domesticated. It's part chase instinct, part social bonding. Logan looked directly at the ambassador. Mekvar recognized the game immediately because it's universal a way that intelligent species and predator companions interact across the galaxy, it seems. The ambassador stepped forward, his warriors moving to flank him protectively. This proves nothing except that Mekvar is easily distracted. "It doesn't change the reality of your situation," Logan nodded. "Maybe not, but it does suggest that our species might have more in common than you initially thought. If our companion animals share similar behaviors and instincts, perhaps we do as well." He tossed the stick again, not as far this time. The Vrekax bounded after it, returning quickly and dropping it at the ambassador's feet this time, looking up expectantly. The ambassador stared down at his supposedly fearsome war beast, now acting like an oversized puppy. One of the warriors made a sound that might have been the Keldari equivalent of clearing his throat. "The human has a point, ambassador," the warrior said. "The similarities are unexpected." Ambassador Trell reluctantly picked up the stick. After a moment's hesitation, he threw it, and Mekvar happily chased after it. "Perhaps," the ambassador conceded, watching his fearsome beast playing fetch, "we should reconsider our approach to Earth integration." Over the next few hours, a surreal scene unfolded at the fairgrounds. The military cordon remained in place, but the immediate tension had dissipated. Logan found himself acting as an impromptu cultural intermediary, explaining Earth's relationship with domesticated animals while learning about the Keldari's evolutionary history with the Vrekax. It turned out that the Vrekax had been companions to the Keldari for thousands of years, evolving from fierce predators to working animals and eventually to status symbols. The most elite Keldari warriors were each assigned a Vrekax partner, and the creatures were indeed formidable in combat, but they were also intelligent, social animals with complex emotional lives. "We never considered that other species might develop similar relationships," the ambassador admitted as they watched Mekvar playing with two more Vrekax that had been brought down from the ship. "Our previous conquests have involved species that either feared or worshipped our beasts." "Earth has a long history with companion animals," Logan explained. "Dogs, cats, horses, they've been alongside us for thousands of years, not just as tools or weapons, but as friends." The ambassador nodded thoughtfully. "This friendship concept is not unknown to us, but we had not considered it might extend across species." By sunrise, the emergency alerts had been canceled. People were allowed to return to their homes, though many remained glued to their screens, watching the unprecedented diplomatic breakthrough unfold. The Keldari warriors, initially stoic and threatening, had gradually relaxed, especially when it became clear that the humans posed no threat to their Vrekax companions. Logan, exhausted but exhilarated, sat on a bench watching as a group of specially selected military working dogs were brought in to meet the Vrekax. The alien creatures approached the Earth animals with curious caution, sniffing and circling while their handlers stood by nervously. "You took quite a risk," Colonel Hayes said, sitting down beside him. Throwing that stick could have gone very differently. Logan nodded. I know, but something about the way Mekvar was behaving, I just knew he'd respond to it. Some behaviors transcend evolutionary trees, apparently. Well, it worked. The ambassador has withdrawn their ultimatum and requested new diplomatic talks as equals this time. Hayes smiled slightly. They're particularly interested in our animal husbandry techniques. Apparently, Vrekaks are prone to certain behavioral issues that they've never fully resolved. Like chewing furniture, Logan asked, watching as one of the Vrekaks playfully batted at a tennis ball a handler had brought. More like occasional unprovoked aggression against their own handlers. But the principle's the same. They're amazed by how docile yet effective our working dogs are. As the morning progressed, curious civilians were allowed to approach the perimeter under strict supervision. Children especially were fascinated by the alien creatures, and surprisingly, the Vrekaks seemed equally interested in the small humans. They're attracted to high-pitched voices, one of the Keldari warriors explained when Logan asked about it. Vrekaks young make similar sounds. By midday, what had started as a potential invasion had transformed into something more like a cultural exchange fair. Keldari officials who had remained on their ships descended to the surface, eager to see the interaction for themselves. Human experts in animal behavior, evolutionary biology, and veterinary science arrived to study and learn from the Vrekaks. Logan found himself constantly surrounded by questions from both humans and Keldari. His theoretical work on xenobiology was suddenly the hottest topic in two species scientific communities. A Keldari scientist even requested permission to translate his papers into their language. As evening approached, Ambassador Trell requested a private conversation with Logan. They walked the perimeter of the fairgrounds, Mekvar trotting contentedly alongside them. Your insight has changed the course of our interaction with Earth, the ambassador said. The High Command is reconsidering our entire expansion protocol because of what happened here. I'm glad, Logan said sincerely. War would have been devastating for both our species. The ambassador made a gesture that Logan had learned was agreement. Indeed. But more than avoiding conflict, you have shown us a possibility we had not considered, that different species across the galaxy might share fundamental social patterns. This has philosophical implications for my people. They stopped at the edge of the grounds, looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the distance. We came to demonstrate our superiority, Trell continued. Instead, you demonstrated our commonality. It is humbling. Logan watched as Mekvar playfully pounced on a patch of grass where an insect had caught his attention. Sometimes the fiercest predators have the most playful spirits, he said. That's true on Earth, and apparently true for the Vrekaks as well. My superiors have authorized me to propose a joint research initiative, the ambassador said. We would share our knowledge of Vrekaks biology and behavior, and in return, we would learn from your extensive experience with companion species. Would you be interested in leading the human side of such an endeavor? Logan stared at the ambassador in surprise. Me, I'm just a theoretical researcher. There are experts with far more practical experience. You saw what others did not, Trell interrupted. That kind of insight is rare and valuable. Besides, he added with what might have been the Keldari equivalent of a smile, Mekvar seems to have bonded with you. He is an excellent judge of character. As if on cue, the massive alien creature bounded over and nudged Logan's hand with its head. Logan automatically scratched behind what he determined was a sensory cluster, and Mekvar rumbled with pleasure. I'd be honored, Logan said finally, though I have a lot to learn about the Vrekaks. As do we about your Earth animals, Trell replied. That is the point of exchange, mutual growth. Over the next few weeks, the Keldari presence on Earth transformed from an intimidating occupation to a diplomatic mission. Other Keldari ships around the world established similar connections with local populations, often using their Vrekaks companions as ambassadors of goodwill. Logan found himself traveling between research facilities, helping to establish protocols for the interspecies research initiative. The Vrekaks became celebrities of sorts, with Mekvar in particular developing a following on social media after videos of his first game of fetch went viral. But beyond the scientific breakthroughs and diplomatic successes, Logan often thought about that moment of connection when an alien predator chased after a stick simply because something deep in its evolutionary programming recognized the universal joy of play. It was a reminder that across the vast distances of space, life might develop in surprisingly similar ways. 1 month after the Fairgrounds incident, Logan stood on the observation deck of the Keldari flagship, looking down at Earth through a transparent viewport. Ambassador Trell stood beside him while Mekvar dozed at their feet. "Your world looks peaceful from here," Trell observed. "It has its problems," Logan admitted, "but we're working on them, as are we all." The ambassador gestured to a star map displayed on a nearby screen. "The High Command has revised our expansion protocols. We will now begin all first contacts with cultural exchange rather than demonstrations of power. It is a significant change for my people." "Change can be good," Logan said. "It's how species evolve and adapt, indeed." And speaking of adaptation, Trell produced a small device from a pocket in his garment. "Our scientists have developed this translator for Vrekak's vocalizations. We thought you might find it useful in your research." Logan accepted the device with surprise. "You can translate what they're saying." "Not precisely. They don't have language as we understand it, but they do have distinct vocalizations for different emotional states and basic needs. The device interprets these based on frequency, duration, and context." Logan activated the translator and pointed it at the sleeping Mekvar. The device displayed contentment, security, pack presence. "He feels safe here," Logan said, oddly touched. "As he should," Trell replied, "as should we all in each other's presence." As the Earth turned slowly beneath them, Logan reflected on how close they had come to conflict and how a simple game of fetch had changed everything. Sometimes, the most profound connections came from the simplest gestures of understanding. The next day, when Logan returned to Earth, he found a package waiting at his apartment. Inside was a stick, the original one he had thrown to Mekvar, now preserved in some kind of clear resin. A note accompanied it, written in carefully formed English letters, to remind both our species that wisdom often comes from unexpected sources, and that play may be the most universal language of all. With gratitude, Ambassador Trell and Mekvar. Logan placed the preserved stick on his mantle, a symbol of the day when aliens had brought their death beast to intimidate, and a human had tossed it a stick and said "fetch," changing the course of interstellar relations with a single, instinctive gesture of friendship.